Hello, Bruce here at Old Fart's Guitar Journey. I'm the Old Fart and this is my guitar journey. If you've seen earlier videos, you'll know I'm 67 years old and just very recently took up the guitar, tried to learn guitar. It's actually 1 week today since I received this Epiphone Les Paul studio guitar. So I played my very first, opened it for you last week and played my very first note last week. So this is 1 week later, or what I'm calling is week one in my guitar journey. I'm following guitar mastering method, Charlie and company, and I'm mostly following now Eddie's blueprint program. So that's what I'm decided to do. Now, not limiting it to that, I also look at other things on the internet and YouTube and stuff and try to pick up a range of tips, but that's basically what I'm following. You'll remember that my long-term objective is to learn how to improvise blues type guitar as well as other stuff, and that I want to emphasize on my journey perfect practice. It's not practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect. I know won't be obsessed with achieving perfection immediately, but you want to strive towards being technically correct and then musically and all that stuff. So that's the journey I'm on. 1 week in, where am I at? Well, in a few words, I sound like crap, it hurts like hell, but I've learned a tremendous amount in the past week. Silly little things like the difference between having your guitar, the waist of the guitar, body of your guitar on my right leg versus my left leg, and how my forearm lines up with the strings this way, but my left hand's a long way out, whereas if I'm on my right hip, right thigh, forearms angled a little, but a lot easier. Difference between having the neck pulled back or out a bit. It's a lot easier out a bit. Anchoring, trying to remember muscle memory where the strings are. If I anchor my little finger, I found not on the metal part of the pickup, but below there's another second edge there, the pickup. Kind of anchor there so that as I slide up and down, whether I choose to play up here or down here, my hand is sort of the same distance, and relative to my pinky, I'm anchored where are the keys, and so all that stuff I just found out by trial and error. And also remember, I didn't even have a guitar. I had this course for something like 10 days before I even got my guitar. So I went through the basics module of the course, both in Charlie's Guitar 101 and in Eddie's Guitar Blueprint before I even got my guitar. But in a way, that's an advantage because I got a better feel of where I'm going and why the basics are so important and how everything builds and everything. Also, I think there's other advantages, I think. If you recall, last week I didn't even have an amplifier. Well, I have an amplifier now, finally. It just came yesterday. But I've been practicing for 6 days or 6.5 days without an amplifier, which, again, I think it was frustrating, but kind of an advantage because you can really hear the difference when you don't have the amp on of interference. You're trying to fret one key and how it's just touching your fingers, just the bottom of your fingers just touching the next string, and you can feel the buzz and hear it. So there's certain advantages to playing and learning without an amp. Now the course, and just about any course I've seen, gets very quickly into they call open chords, things like E and C and G major and D, and where you're using your 3 fingers and essentially all of them, and your first, second, and third finger, and with some like A chords, A string is open and goes over the top. I thought, because I went ahead in the course before I even had a guitar, the guitar mastery course doesn't get to your right hand picking until several lessons later. And so when I saw that lesson, I thought, well, I mean, I could see the importance of starting chords quickly, but if we're going to do perfect practice, I don't want to learn have any bad habits develop before I get to picking, since you're always going to use your right hand. I actually started on those lessons with no fretting at all, just open hand, to learn, try to build muscle memory relative to my reference, where the strings are, and learning, 6E, 5A, 4D, 3G, 2B, 1E. Whoops, 2B, 1E. See how well I learned them? But I'm trying to build hearing the notes and just knowing what the note is, along with muscle memory of where they are, without worrying about my left hand at all, except somewhere in the lessons it talks about keeping things quiet, like you want clear notes. For example, when you just play a low E fairly hard and then quiet that low E, there's still a ring. The other strings are picking up a ring. Whereas if you dampen it, either with your left hand or the side of the palm of your right hand, then it's a lot cleaner. So even though I'm not fretting very quickly to keep it clean, I was doing dampening or muting between each note. So I do. And that was all downstrokes, so I'd also do upstrokes. And I wanted to build my internal rhythm as quickly as possible, so I used the metronome as much as possible, and very slowly. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6E, 5G. Sorry. 6E, 5A, 4D, 3G, 2B, 1E. That kind of stuff, really slow. And then consider that quarter notes. Then put in an eighth note, so something like this. Or even before I get that, count in eighths. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, so that you're plucking the string on the 1 or the 2, and you're placing your pick for the next pluck on the and. So I'll exaggerate, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, I'm exaggerating, placing the pick for the next pluck on the and, so I can pluck it on the beat. So 1, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So then down strokes versus upstrokes. A stroke and up with muting. And then we want efficiency. Later on, you'll see talk about efficiency in picking. So you minimize the movements required of your picks. So ultimately, you'll be able to go much faster. So things like placing the pick instead of all downstrokes or all upstrokes, placing the pick in between and picking either way. So up, down, move the pick, up, down, move the pick, up, down, move the pick, up, down, move the pick. Okay, things like putting eighth notes in, so 1 and 2, and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 2 and 3. I'm not sure if that came out right, but you get the gist of it. So things like that for picking in the first week to try to get muscle memory of where the strings are relative to an anchor, which I put my little finger, trying to move your wrist, mostly. I mean, I move my arm a little, my fingers a little, but mostly in wrist. So that's what I was working on. So then I went to fretting, even before I went to chords. Well, I better learn how to fret a bit. So, there's all sorts of stuff about being just above the metal part of the fret, but close to it to have a good clean, and just push on that string so the other string isn't muted, like. And you want the next string clean. Now, even there, I'm getting some interference. I find it extremely difficult to pick a unique string and not interfere with neighboring strings. I can sort of do it with my first finger, find it next to impossible so far with my second finger because it's just a thicker finger. But anyway, keep plugging away. Now, let's talk about the pain. Until I build calluses, it hurt. It bloody hurts. I could not believe. I'm watching YouTube and you see these kids with short little fingers flying all over, seeming to be effortlessly able to reach and spread their hands way wider than I seem to be able to, and other mature men with great big fat fingers doing really clean notes. And I have pretty small hands, and on my middle finger number 2, I find it next to impossible to isolate. And I've come to the conclusion that a large part of that is I have not yet developed calluses. Because my fingers are so soft, I have to push really hard to overcome the mushiness of the tip of my finger before there's enough pressure on the fret. And that hurts. It just does, okay? And because my finger's squished more, it's wider and it's touching the next string. Whereas when I get calluses are basically scar tissue. When you get scar tissue, pushing out just a bit and it's hard, then you don't have to push as hard because your finger isn't absorbing, tissue isn't absorbing the string. It's harder, so you don't have to push as hard with your finger because you've got a harder tip that puts it on the fret, and because you don't have to push so hard down and swish your finger out, spread it out, you don't hit the next string. At least this is what I'm hoping what happens. I've seen this on other YouTubes where they talk about after a month or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, you get calluses built up, and then also your chords everything gets much cleaner. So, it comes down to traumatizing your fingers enough to develop calluses. I've considered abusing my fingers with sandpaper or something, but realized that won't work because it's not actually in the right place. So the only way is to go through the pain. Don't, not till your fingers are bleeding or ridiculous, but I don't see any way around having to You have to develop calluses so it doesn't hurt, and you have to develop calluses so you get cleaner notes. And the only way to develop calluses is to irritate your fingers enough so that scar tissue forms and you get calluses. And the only way to irritate your fingers in exactly the right places is to practice through the pain. So don't expect, I'm not expecting now to be clean, noted, until I've developed calluses. And so my short-term mission is to just practice a lot to develop calluses. And while I'm doing that, don't expect it to be that clean, but practice as best you can placing your fingers, fretting as best you can, even though it won't be clean, so that when your calluses develop, you've already got the good habits of fretting and you have memorized muscle memory for the different chords, so that hopefully it will magically become much cleaner and much easier when I develop calluses. So then on to the chords. Well, just fretting without chords, I've been doing practices like using just my first finger and going down the strings. So I'm learning how to find the string with my first finger and how to pluck the string that I'm fretting, which is harder than it sounds. So you can concentrate on either where your pick's going or where your finger's going. I find it cleaner when I go up, pick up, and move up. So you could, I've been practicing doing that with each finger. So just on the G or the C, do it with your first finger, go down, and then your second finger. So I can make the note sound reasonable, but the note beside it is terrible. Getting that clean and the second note beside it clean, I find very difficult until I get calluses built up. Anyway, so try to do that with each fingers. This is what exercise I'm doing. And I should be doing it with a metronome. So when I slow down and make my move of both my pick and my finger in the and between beats, it's cleaner. Yeah, see how much cleaner that is? Anyway, that's what I'm trying to practice, so you'll see how successful I am or not. Then another thing is to, they talk about efficiency, keeping your fingers placed. So I can place my first three fingers all on a fret. Only this fret is active. These don't matter. But it's efficient then to go to the second one. The finger's already in place. I just lift this one, and you only need to lift it a little. You don't have to go way off for efficiency. And to make it easier to learn that, if you come further, you call it up the neck. I find that confusing. If this is the head, isn't this up the neck? No, that's down the neck tonally. This is up the neck. But anyway, if you come up and do A, the first, second, third strings, you don't have to reach as far. They're smaller diameter strings, they're easier to move, and the frets are closer together, so it all makes everything easier. So if we go here with that, then it's just much easier. Sorry, I'm hitting the B string. So we'll come up to the B string and do the same. Oops, hit the B string. Come up one more string. Third string, G string. You'll see I'm supposed to be going with the metronome, and I'm not. When I do slow down, everything's much cleaner. Come up to the D string. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So when I slow down and have the patience to do it with the metronome, which I should do, it's much easier, and you can mentally think about making your moves on the and, both moving your pick and your fingers so it's clean. Okay, on to chords. Here I really deviated from the course in the sense that I didn't follow it in order and start with the chords pretty quickly. I jumped ahead to picking to get basics of picking and finding open notes, and I jumped ahead to fretting just to get basics of fretting with my fingers, and some exercises, and realized how friggin' painful it is till you develop calluses, and how difficult it is to not touch other strings to get clean notes. Now I'm coming back to chords, and here I confess I really went off the rails in terms of differing from the course. If I go with my sheet here. You'll be able to print out this sheet from all over the place, but from Guitar Mastery, it has a sheet on this, and it shows the open chords, you know, C, A, G, E, D. All of them use only 3 fingers, okay? First, second, and third finger. Now, when I went ahead in the course beyond that, I saw lessons on what they call bar chords. Okay, and for the bar chord, you need your first finger available to substitute for the nut. This will become clear later. So, I confess, I made a conscious decision of learning how to place my fingers without using the first finger right from the beginning. Basically, that amounts to adding 1 to each number on these black circles, so that you're using the next finger furthest up than the one printed, which leaves your first finger free to ultimately move on to bar chords. Now, I'm not worrying about my first finger now and figuring out how to slam it down across all things and do bar chords, but I just have sort of made a conscious decision, rather than learning the fingering for open chords using my first finger, I'm going to try to learn the fingering for open chords using the fingers I will use when I get to bar chords. So that's a conscious decision on my part, because I went ahead and looked at the course and saw it was coming. Another conscious decision I've made for the time being is I've seen in other videos how you can cheat to a certain extent or do chords with just 2 fingers. No, they don't sound as good. No, they're not technically the right chord. But with 2 fingers, you can get pretty good. And I just think it'll be easier to start with 2 fingers and then bring in the 3rd finger. I think it'll be easier to start right away with the fingers I'm going to be using in bar chords to get those shapes anyway, to use them on open chords. So that's a conscious decision on my part that I figured out on my own by going ahead and seeing what's coming back. And that may or may not work out. It's maybe a big mistake, but anyway, that's what I'm doing for now. So I'm actually currently trying to practice using 2 finger chords for these chords, and be happy with that for now. And then I will use 3 fingers, but they will be the 3 fingers that I use for a bar chord on the frets, and not add in the 1st finger mimicking the, not worry about that till I get to bar chords. That's my conscious decision. Also on the A, I've made a conscious decision to just use 1 finger for that, across the 3rd finger across all the 3 strings. That's another way to play A, I saw, because I looked ahead, and I'm just going to do that from the beginning. No, it's not technically as clean, but I want to learn how to do that right from the beginning. So those are conscious decisions on my part, because I went ahead and saw what was coming and are coming back. So that's what I've done. Having said that, it's still pretty useless. But for example, that approach makes the G chord starting over on the 6th string using the 4th finger and the 3rd string on the 3rd finger on the 5th string, and the C chord, it's the exact same shape. You just move over 1 string with those 2 fingers. Okay. Basically, I'm approaching this, instead of thinking in terms of chords, thinking right from the beginning in terms of shapes. A D shape, an A shape, a C shape, G shape, E shape, D shape, E shape. Whether I use 2 fingers or 3 fingers, I really want to get those shapes into muscle memory. And when I play them at the far end of the fretboard, that's open chords, and I get the open chord effect. If I move up the fretboard closer to the pickups, I keep the same shape because I'm not putting down the 1st finger as the nut. I don't get the full effect of the chord, but on the 3 notes I do. So for example, let's do an E chord, okay? So the E chord uses the open E, and this chart says to use the 2nd and 3rd finger on the 2nd frets and the 1st finger on the 3rd fret. You see how I'm struggling to get clean notes. Anyway, so doing that in a 2-finger chord, the E, it's you're not using the 1st fingers, you're moving everything up in terms of fingers. So instead of using the 2nd and 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the 5th and 4th strings, I'm using the 3rd and 4th finger, my pinky, on the 2nd fret of strings 5 and 4. And the E is still the open E, so I get the same 3 notes. The same bass note. I'm just using 2 fingers further along, but I'm learning the shape for bar chords, and I'm leaving my first finger free to ultimately do bar chords. And on the E chord, the 3rd string would normally be down at the 1st fret. It's now open, okay, so it's different. But the 1st and 2nd string are the same. So the 3rd string sounds a little off compared to. But that's okay. It's easier for now to use just 2 fingers, learn those shapes. I'll bring in the 3rd finger later, but right from the start, I'm planning to use the fingers I will use for bar chords in my open chords. It also forces me to strengthen my 4th finger, my pinky. My 1st finger is all, relatively strong compared to the pinky. So anyway, so that's where I'm at after a week. Sound terrible. It really hurts, but I've learned a tremendous amount and have a plan for moving forward with specific objectives to carry on. Thanks very much. Bye now.